Good morning. This is the beginning of week 2. I know many of you have already jumped into week 2 and you've started working on the learning module and the discussion boards for the coming week. But let me just say a couple of things to introduce the topics that we're going to be covering in the next week. You will be building on what you've done this week, which is learning about the federal judicial system. This week you examined the structure and organization of the federal court system. The base, which is the trial courts, the U.S. district courts, the first appeal level, the U.S. courts of appeal, and of course the ultimate appeals level, the United States Supreme Court. Of course, the Supreme Court is much in the news today and will be in the next few days and weeks because of the death of Justice Scalia. So you'll have ample opportunity, if you care to pay attention in the news to what the court does, the Supreme Court does, and how it functions, and most importantly, how vacancies in that court are filled. That's not really our topic for this week or for the coming weeks, but it is interesting and it relates to what we're doing. What we will be doing this week, week 2, is jumping from the federal court systems into state court systems. So you'll have the opportunity to examine and compare the state court systems with the federal court system. Most states have court systems that mirror to some extent the structure and organization of the federal courts. That is to say, they have a basic trial level, and I hesitate with this because they actually have levels that are sort of below the trial level. But the first trial level in the state courts that we're really concerned about primarily is what's called the first court of record, and that is the court from which an appeal can be taken without retrying the case. So you'll have a set of courts that are the trial court level. You'll have, you may or may not have, an intermediate appeals level in your state. Most states do have that intermediate court of appeals, but not all of them. Some of them still have just a two-tier system where you have a trial court and then you have the state Supreme Court, which goes by many different names. The highest court in the state is what I'm referring to there. But most states now do have that third level in between, or actually it's a second level. There will be the trial level, the intermediate appeals level, and the highest level, just as there is in the federal system. You'll have the opportunity, not just this week, but as we go along, to examine the state court systems in your own state primarily, but you can also delve into other states if you wish to. We are introduced this week to two legal concepts that I'm sure you've heard of, but you may not really understand what they mean or how they work. And those two concepts are jurisdiction and venue. They're related to each other, but they are very different. Jurisdiction refers to the power of a court to hear certain kinds of cases. So it is the what of the decision-making process in determining which court will handle whatever case is coming up. So, for instance, if you have a criminal case, you would go to a court that has jurisdiction over criminal cases. But then you have to determine which of the criminal courts within the state or within the federal system has jurisdiction over this particular criminal case, and that involves the issue of venue. So jurisdiction, to oversimplify these concepts, jurisdiction refers to the what, which court will hold the trial, and the venue refers to where the trial will be held. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a murder. Well, might as well just go to the top. Let's say you have a murder that occurs in Richmond, Virginia, in the city of Richmond, Virginia. In Virginia, the trial court for criminal cases is called the circuit court. So you know that once somebody is apprehended and charged with this crime, the trial of that person will be held in a circuit court. Now, Virginia has dozens of circuit courts. There's one for every county. There are circuits, that's why they're called circuit courts. There are various regions and districts all across Virginia. So there are lots of circuit courts from which to choose. How do we know which one is the appropriate one? Well, it's the one where the crime was committed. This crime was committed in Richmond, so it would be the circuit court for the city of Richmond. That is just an example, but that's how jurisdiction and venue work everywhere. Obviously, the names of the courts will change, the locations will change depending on the particular state rules as to venue. But in a criminal case, the venue is always, first and foremost at least, where the crime was committed. Sometimes the venue will be switched or moved, but that is for reasons other than basic venue considerations. And we'll get into that as the weeks go on. In fact, we've got a module that deals with just that. One other thing I want to say before I be quiet here is that even though this is just week 2, you need to be looking ahead a couple of weeks. In week 4, you're going to be asked to interview somebody who is can be classified as court personnel. Now, that could be a judge or a lawyer. It can be a clerk. It could be a bailiff. It could be a deputy clerk. It could be anyone who regularly works within the court system. Now, it doesn't matter what court system it is. Usually it's a little easier to try to interview somebody in a state court system, especially one of the lower courts, than it is to interview someone in the federal system, mainly because it's really hard to get into federal buildings nowadays unless you have security clearance. So I would suggest that you jump on this interview process right away. Your module suggests, and I heartily back this up, that you should find somebody to interview and present that person with an interview consent form, which you can find on the website under Module 2, Learning Module 2. Present that person with the interview consent form and have it signed and submitted to you, because when you submit the interview results in week 4, you also submit that consent form so that I know that you have properly obtained permission not only to interview the person, but to print the results of the interview. Some of your interview subjects will prefer not to be named, and that's perfectly all right. Just identify them by their title, by the job title. You don't have to use their actual names if they don't want you to. It won't matter one way or the other as far as your grade goes. I don't think I have anything more to say about this module until we get into the discussion board a little bit. I want to hear what you have to say. Your discussion board topic has to do with how the state courts work, and your short paper topic has to do with whether you think state court judges or federal court judges have the more difficult job, and comparing them. What do state court judges do? What do federal court judges do? You have some idea of the answer to that latter part of that question because you've already examined the federal courts a little bit for this week, but you'll get into it even more, and we'll talk about it in the discussion boards as well. I'm anxious to hear from all of you. If you have any problems, as always, please email me. The email goes directly to my phone, so no matter where I am, it'll ping, and I'll know that somebody needs to communicate with me. That is by far the quickest way to get my attention. I also always check and see if there are questions in the general questions discussion board. So right now there aren't any, but if you have any, if you want to ask a general question that you're not in any urgent need of a reply to, by all means do it that way and I'll reply, and everybody then will see the answer. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you, if you have any difficulties, if you need extensions of time for any reason, not just willy-nilly, but for any legitimate reason. It's winter time. I don't know exactly what your all situation is in terms of weather. Most of you, or many of you, are in New England, so that you're going to be subjected to way worse weather than I am here in Southwest Virginia. But we're having some snow right now, and I know that when it does snow, when that snow is heavy, very often we will lose power, which means we also lose internet service. And you may be in that same situation. If so, try to get me a message, and I'll take that into consideration and not penalize you for anything that might be late. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye now because I've talked too long, but I will be in touch with you through these announcements that I'll do every week. There will be a new announcement each Monday morning. And I look forward to all your writing. Bye.